One of them is establishing a new and truly independent 9/11 investigation. With no connection to the executive branch. And with oversight from Congress, the 9/11 Truth Movement, and the families of victims. There are a number of other facts. And to the 14 permanent military bases we have. Reminding. Now I mention these two things together because they're so intimately connected. And yes, we know that Iraq had absolutely no connection with 9/11. We know that the 9/11 Commission report is full of falsehoods and didn't even address most of the questions, much less answer them. But even if the government's conspiracy theory were, and that's a big if, even if it were essentially correct, Iraq would have nothing to do with 9/11. I tell people, and you see, because I'm going to Washington where there are a lot of people who are skeptical of us in the 9/11 Truth Movement and who are reluctant to embrace our doubts about the official theory. I have to take a little bit of a different tack with these folks. And it could be helpful to you in dealing with some of the people that don't want to listen to your truth. What I say to them is, even if you believe the government's story, and that there were, in fact, the conspirators were 19 Arab hijackers with box cutters. Why didn't we invade Saudi Arabia? You see, you all know that the Iraq War was planned long before 9/11. In fact, before George W. Bush was appointed president. The Afghanistan War was planned before 9/11 because of that pipeline. We had troops massed, ready to invade Afghanistan before 9/11 happened. You don't have to depend on the results of the 9/11 investigation. You don't have to wait around for a couple of years to find out who was really guilty and get all the information. You don't have to wait for that to understand that because the existence of the 9/11 tragedy was exploited by this administration falsely, because we have absolute proof that the war was not caused by faulty intelligence, but by manipulated intelligence and deliberate deception. We have the evidence today to impeach Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, and Condoleezza. the truth of 9/11. We have the evidence to indict them for treason. People say to me, you really believe that people in our government would be responsible for 2,600 people dying in the World Trade Center? You're crazy! And I remind them that more Americans than that have died in the Iraq War, and that is their fault, and they admit it. If Cheney and Wolfowitz and Pearl and Libby and all the other conspirators within the Department of Defense and the executive branch of government admit in writing in the PNAC document that they planned the Iraq War, and if on the basis of all the evidence and testimony by insiders in the administration like Clark and all the others who have left, that they were planning this Iraq War and shoving it down the throats of the government. Since we have that, and we know that they have been perfectly willing to sacrifice all those American lives and $300 billion that belongs to our children and grandchildren, what makes you think that they are not willing to sacrifice the lives of 2,600 Americans in the World Trade Center? Now, my call for an independent investigation doesn't depend on the fact that we have proof that it's an inside job. We don't have to prove our case. We don't have to come up with a conspiracy theory and prove it's true. We don't have to say Stephen Jones has absolute proof that'll stand up in a court of law that thermite was used and those buildings came down as a result. I think we're very close to having such proof, but we don't have to have that. We don't have to have the proof that there was a deliberate orchestration of perhaps 15 exercises to completely paralyze our air defenses so those hijackers could succeed. We don't have to prove that case. We don't have to prove any case to get an independent investigation. The government has given their conspiracy theory. They have put it out as official dogma, and it is their job to prove their case, not ours. Don't back down when somebody poo-poos you because you want an independent investigation. Don't fall for letting them call you a conspiracy theorist. We know 9/11 was a conspiracy. We just don't know who the conspirators were yet. You tell them, as I'm going to tell the members of Congress for the next 3 days, and I've already lined up some appointments, and I'm hoping to get some co-sponsors for this legislation. We've got to make a breakthrough. I'm going to tell them that even if the government's story happens to be essentially correct, we need an independent investigation to determine responsibility, because nobody has taken it. was the scapegoat. And he lost his career. When the Cole, the USS Cole, had a rowboat blow a hole in its side and kill 17 of our sailors, the commanding officer of that ship lost his promotion and his career. Well, if 9/11 was not an inside job, if it was strictly a matter of gross incompetence, bordering on criminal negligence, if that's what it was, then how come nobody has been fired, nobody has been punished, nobody has been demoted, nobody has been If that government conspiracy theory is true, then for all we know, we, the American people, are still unprotected from an attack. We demand accountability. If the Department of Defense, with its $500 billion a year budget, was unable to protect its own headquarters